The eldest daughter syndrome, also known as the third parent. This is when the eldest daughter starts to take on responsibility that are essentially designed to be for the parent. This is also where the eldest daughter loses sight of her own youth. So because she's so preoccupied in trying to be a parent to her siblings or supports to her parents, she no longer has time for herself in terms of socializing, making silly mistakes, doing things that essentially children her age would do. Even if there is a large age discrepancy between her younger siblings and herself, there is something lost. Childhood, teenage years, or just carefreeness. This is not always due to bad parenting. This can be due to life circumstances where a parent dies and the eldest daughter or next eldest person in the house has to step up and take on a lot more responsibility. Or, your parents are doing their best in terms of trying to provide for the family financially, so all other responsibilities fall on her. It's not coming from malicious intent at times from the parents. It could be due to necessity. That's not to say that there aren't parents who take advantage of this and actually do it because it's not a necessity and fail to recognize that their needs are more important than their kids' needs and how their daughter is not a surrogate parent. It's important here to recognize that even though your intentions can be good and there is another person to help out, be very aware of what you are taking away from them. Some of the consequences of being the eldest daughter or having the eldest daughter syndrome in this case is that you feel a very large sense of responsibility for everyone. You cannot understand that there are limits to how much you need to be able to give people. It becomes harder for them to prioritize their needs or even recognize them. They're so used to being able to micro focus on other people around them that they've kind of lost their sense of self and being aware of what their wants are. They are the last priority, and it shows up across all relationships. The saddest thing is, oftentimes they start developing a lot of guilt anytime they try to live life for themselves.
TikTok remains a corrupting force on social media and on life in general, with aspects of the culture it's created as well as the influence of its UI entering other applications. One of the very few redeeming qualities is that it has opened the discussion on shared female experiences. Some of these, like the almond mom concept, fall short of feminist criticism and remain firmly in the acknowledgement phase. However, I think that one trend has been successful in both being recognized as abuse as well as critiquing why it occurs. This is likely because it allows for a sense of personal vindication and bestows a victimized status. But still, I think it's a good thing. This trend is eldest daughter. The eldest daughter is what it sounds like. Often the firstborn, but not always, she is the third parent whom her mother and father rely on for babysitting, household chores, and other burdens to an unfair degree. They're typically held to high standards outside of the house, expected to have high grades, to never misbehave, and to be endlessly patient, putting the needs of others before their own. This is a form of parentification, which is specifically gendered as being female, a daughter, plays a specific role in the facilitation of additional burdens and responsibilities that male children do not receive.
Being the eldest daughter meant I was called selfish a lot growing up. Selfish for establishing boundaries, selfish for wanting to maintain a social life outside of family, selfish for making decisions that didn't align with the way my family thought. I grew up thinking something was wrong with me, that I was the villain, that I was unlovable or damaged. The word selfish left an ugly scar on me, and because of that, one day, I stopped speaking up for myself. Instead of voicing my opinions, I succumbed to silence. I was taught that love meant obedience, and so I succumbed to people-pleasing. It took me a while to realize that selflessness meant suppressing who I was. All I know is that I'm not that person anymore. I will never be again.
It is because she is female that a girl child is saddled with womanly duties, such as cleaning, cooking, and childcare. And it is because she is female that she is gifted these from a young age, and expected to be more mature to match the expectations of those around her. In many traditional families, girls at any age are viewed as mothers and wives to be. Their childhood is simply an extended period of training, and as soon as they reach a certain level of independence, the mother, who often faced similar training and now faces a similar amount of duties, views her as a method to lessen her own load. It mirrors the ways in which women pass along suffering to one another and facilitate the contribution of patriarchy. Often, men use women to enforce the patriarchy. It is women who bring their daughters to be circumcised. It is women who raise their daughters to stricter standards than their sons. It is women who portray the message to their daughters that womanhood is suffering, and that suffering is something they should wish to attain. They do this not because subordination is an innate feminine trait, but because they have been taught that this is the way to survive, the only way to live, and often resent and blame other women who have managed to escape for making light of the ways in which they didn't. The burden of family life on a woman is often placed upon her with glee by other women. The sharing of misery and the resulting commiseration. Oh, you'll understand when you have kids. Are you suffering like I am yet? Is a large part of female socialization. It saturates daily life, these shared complaints that illustrate that you are not alone. They also serve to persuade you not to give them up. Not shaving, not wearing those high heels, or not having children will set you apart from those who do. It places you into a group of other, which other women will in turn resent for not suffering in the same manner in which they are. It serves as a distraction from changing the source of the struggle at its heart by presenting them as normal and inextricable aspects of female existence. As Bonnie Burstow writes, as decades of feminists have demonstrated only too clearly, the paradigmal little girl is treated differently from the paradigmal little boy. While the boy is encouraged to venture out into the world, to explore, and to go about his projects, the girl is encouraged to stay home, in some cases to be absolutely adorable, and in almost all cases to help mother and teacher and to be very, very obedient. She receives less attention than male students. She is taught androcentric history. Generally, she receives less nurture than her brother, and she is the one forced into household chores. The result is both deprivation and the clear message that serious learning and nurture are not for her. She is being primed to be a body that caretakes and a body that exists for the pleasuring of others.
So we've all seen the hilarious memes about the oldest daughter and how anxious she is and how she's on top of everything. That's actually a real problem. As a therapist who works with millennial and Gen Z clients, many of my millennial clients are becoming parents. And this behavior pattern, this behavior dynamic of the overachieving, over anxious worrying that we've developed as being the eldest daughters is showing up in their parenting. It shows up in their relationships, and it gives them this caretaker status that they don't actually really want. And it creates a lot of resentment in relationships, and people feel very unfulfilled in their lives. If this is you, I encourage you to think about behavior patterns that show up in your relationship that are keeping you unsatisfied. Think about how much you give to others, how you prioritize yourself, what your boundaries are, how often you say yes instead of saying no. Think about all of those things. It's important to recognize how you're showing up so you can actually break this generational cycle.
In other words, the eldest daughter is just one part of a cycle of burden passing that occurs before she can be pressured into creating her own. Part of the cycle relies on the promise of having someone to suffer for you or with you, and the promise of companionship. It is a prime example of the ways women are socialized long before we understand what socialization is. When you are raised in an unjust way, it becomes difficult to point out when injustice occurs in other ways. It's simply another way of expression that mirrors what you already know to be true about life. Many are not taking their analysis this far, but I am still glad that there is a discussion about the parentification that often occurs to eldest daughters, as well as the acknowledgement that it is, in fact, abuse. Acknowledgement is a step towards breaking the cycle and not falling for the lie that it will all be okay if we go ahead and have children, marriages, and lives we don't want, because there will be someone else to suffer and carry the load alongside us. This, dear viewers, is where we part. I thought of this topic in part because I was remembering a conversation I had with a friend back in high school. I used to like playing Overwatch, and you know the way that game works is you can't just pause in the middle of a live match. And if you pause or you leave too many times and get kicked, you don't get to play like the high levels anymore. You can't play the levels that I was playing, at least. And there's this issue where I'd be playing with my friend, and he would tell his parents, I'm playing video games, and then they would just leave him alone for hours. With my mom, I had to have a whole thing. I had to have a checklist of let me make sure I did all my chores first. Let me verbally tell her that I'm going to be playing this and that I will have to wait until a match is over to come do whatever other thing she wants me to do. And it was the difference in what I had to do to get peace to play this game. I usually had to wait until 2 or 3 a.m. to be sure that I could play without being disturbed. because inevitably what would happen was I would start having leisure time and my mom would come up and disturb it and ask me to do something like take the dog out or do this chore right now. And I would do it, but even just asking, hey, can you wait 10 minutes, 3 minutes until this match is over first would get her so, so angry. And this isn't the same thing as parentification or eldest daughter syndrome or any of that, but it was something that made me think on the topic, the differences in what being a teenager, what being a child was like. For example, with my brother, my mom says he doesn't know how to wash a pot, and he's 15. And I was doing my own laundry and cleaning my own bathroom by 5th grade. I was doing all of my room chores by 5th grade. I knew how to wash a pot because the minute that I dirtied one on my own, my mom told me, go wash it. And when I didn't do it right, I had to wash it again. It's the difference in how we raise boys and girls that really, really gets on my nerves, especially when I'm looking at my little brother, I try to have empathy, but sometimes he is so functionally useless at everyday things, in part because the standards are just so different. And that's just honestly not fair. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.